Dear Chaverim, a gute Woche. We are standing Motzoi Shabbos Parshas Shemos. You know, there's the story of a person who went into a bakery Erev Shabbos to buy challah. He asks the person behind the counter, how much is it for this challah? To which that person responded, $5. $5 for one challah? Well, really, comes the response, for the challah, it's $1. But there's another $4 for Israel. Says the potential customer that I come here to make a donation to Israel, I want to buy a challah. Well, if you want to buy a challah here, it's $5. Bekitzer, he takes out $5, he buys the challah. A few weeks go by, Erev Shabbos, he wants to buy a kokosh cake. He goes into the same bakery. How much for that kokosh cake? Well, for that kokosh cake, $50. $50 for a kokosh cake? Well, it's $10 for the cake, it's $40 for Israel. Lachamal, who's talking about Israel? Bekitzer, he buys the kokosh cake. A few weeks later, he walks into the bakery. He wants to buy a cheesecake. He looks at a beautiful cheesecake. How much for that cheesecake? That cheesecake? $350. $350 for a cheesecake? Well, it's $50 for the cheesecake, but it's $300 for Israel. Now this man is very upset. $300 for Israel. Can I speak to the owner of this establishment? So yeah. So the person, the worker behind the counter, takes a couple of steps towards the back of the bakery and shouts out, Israel, someone wants to talk to you. My friends, this week's Parshas Shemos, is where the Torah goes away from counting, from relating, from telling the story of Jewish individuals, Abraham and Sarah and Yitzchak and Rivka, etc., etc. And this week we begin speaking about the Jewish people, Bnei Yisrael. As we read in the Haftarah, Haboim Yashrish Yaakov, that Yaakov, who came down to Egypt, was planted, but what sprouted, what blossomed from the individual Jew, Yisrael, the Jewish people. Yet we all know that when we speak about the Jewish people, what we are really speaking about is a Jewish individual. Because the kavanah of all the Jewish people is to look out for one Jewish individual. And indeed, when the Torah is relating to us the first story of what Moshe Rabbeinu did in his young adult life, the Torah tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu left the palace and he saw an Egyptian hitting a Yid. And Moshe Rabbeinu defended the Yid. And ultimately Moshe Rabbeinu paid a huge price for defending that Jew. Moshe Rabbeinu needed to run away from Egypt. Now really one can challenge the whole story. Moshe Rabbeinu, that knew who he was being raised in the palace. Moshe Rabbeinu was being groomed to be a future leader of Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu in the future, naturally, being a Yid, would be able to take away all of the horrible decrees against the Yidden. So one might think, even if that means to turn the blind eye to something that's happening towards one Yid, that's really happening the whole time. What difference will it be if another Yid is going to get beaten yet another time? But that's not Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu understands that the Jewish people, the concern about Bnei Yisrael, begins and ends with the concern for one individual Yid. My friends, we are living at a time that when we look out at what's happening right now, in the last few weeks, we have to make a comment, and we have to take to heart the following. Ubehegdim. This week, Thursday night, after Mincha Ma'ariv, so one of our mispalalim walks over to me, very angry, very upset, and in his voice, I mamish heard an echo of the Rebbe. What was this Yid upset about? He says he doesn't understand. For all of these months, we are living through a pandemic, and rightfully so. People are dying. Baruch Hashem, right now, in as much as there is a terrible illness going around here in the greater Los Angeles, the people that we knew got it, and they got better. But we also know that here in the hospitals, every few minutes, another person is dying from COVID. And because of that, going back from the beginning, people were told that in order at least to slow the spread, you have to wear a mask, you have to wash your hands, you have to keep social distancing. Yet, miracle upon miracle, Unprecedented that only after a few months from the beginning of the discovery of an illness, Baruch Hashem, we discovered a cure, a vaccine. Not only did we discover a vaccine, but the vaccine was distributed throughout these United States. And was tut sich da? That Erev Shabbos, if you look at the news, you'll know that less than 30% of all of the doses that are already sitting in local hospitals were distributed to the people that need them. Imagine, a couple of weeks ago, amongst the Torah world, there was a whole discussion about Dinei Kedima, who should take precedent. What? Who should take precedent? The vaccinations that they have were not b'chlal given yet to the people that need it. And we all experienced one telling the other, Musad, wear your mask better. Wear a mask and save a life. People are concerned to save lives. Where is the concern? Where is the outcry? Where is the indignation? Why don't we have millions of people marching throughout the United States demanding for the vaccine? You already have the medicine, you already have the cure. Why are we focusing about gullus cures, about secondary horrible ways just to minimize the tzara, when you have actually the solution? And actually, with great pride, we the Jewish people can look at what's happening now in Eretz Yisrael, and taka, there is a cure. Look at what's happening over there. Everyone is getting it. Not only the first dose, they're saying that within 8 weeks, everyone will already have gotten their second dose. And over here, garnished. Here you can have a person, a member in a shul that's over 80, did not have it yet. And you know what? People who are now angry, and there's all sorts of demonstrations, and they might be very important demonstrations going on in this country, and everyone is upset about something. Everyone is focused on the wrong thing. First comes life, and then comes everything else which is important. But I'm a lepnisht, so then in stam, then not everything is for nothing. And he's carrying on about that. And when I heard his voice, I heard in his voice, all of this is really a mashal to something even more important going on. For thousands of years we're living in Golus. And we got used to living in Golus. We put on a mask and the social distancing and this washing of the hands. There's all sort of Golus solutions to a Yid living in Golus. And we got used to it. Comes along the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is telling us, Chevre, we have the cure. The cure is Mashiach. We can bring Mashiach. Let's koch sich in Mashiach. Let's stay focused on Mashiach. And what are we stuck in? We're stuck with Golus. We're stuck in Golus. We're not focusing on the right thing. And that was the Rebbe's frustration, because Mela, when there's no cure, and the best you can do is to put on a mask, okay, what should you do? But if you have the cure, it's the end of the world that it's not being distributed properly. People speak stam, yeah. Epis, their rollout was botched up. There's no passion, there's no caring, there's no demanding. Stam, a narrative, yeah, it's coming out very slowly. What coming out very slowly? All of the people that are concerned talk about a life, they should be demanding for this to be distributed tenfold as quick. My friends, there's a gewaltige Hasidische Meis, and we all heard the Meise about a Chassid going to the Rebbe in Russia, and he dafke went with his feet. He didn't want to even go on a horse and buggy. He wanted to walk to go see the Rebbe. It was during the winter, and it was in Russia, and it was snowing, and he was getting older, and it was so cold that he began to lose his koyach. And finally, his koyach went out. He lay down in the snow. He said, Shema Yisrael, what should he do? And miracle upon miracles, he hears in the distance a horse and a buggy. And it's coming in his direction. So with the last ounces of his koyach, he gets up there and he starts waving with his hands. And the Goyish peasant sees a person in the snow. He invites him in. Now this was an open buggy. So for a moment he thought, I'm saved. But it got even colder. The wind of the speed of the travel, he was mamash freezing. And he's sitting there in the wagon, he's sitting from cold, and he looks to his right and he looks to his left and he sees that there are barrels, and he opens up a spigot and out comes mashke, out comes lachaim, out comes vodka. And he asks the wagon driver, can I take a little bit? I'm freezing. He said, Gesundheit. He makes a bracha and he makes a l'chaim, and he feels that he's warming up, which is really all that counts. We should feel that we're warm. He offers the balagola el l'chaim, and by the time he comes to the Alter Rebbe, the chassid is freilach, the balagola is freilach. He schleps the balagola in, and they're dancing in the Rebbe shul. And people, joy is contagious. Everyone is involved in the fire. Someone finally asks the chassid, "Was bist du azay verbrennt?" He says, "I learned the lesson of my life." And he tells the people the story that he was freezing to death, and a miracle, the Eibishter sent Punktes Balagola, and not only did he invite him in, but he shared some of his l'chaim, and he warmed up, and his life was saved. But he says, "I realized something. I realized that we can be sitting mamish next to your solution. You can be sitting next to your l'chaim, but if you don't take it in, you can freeze to death." And the chassid went on to say that Bechlal Torah is compared to mayim. Torah is compared to mayim. Just like there are different types of beverages, there are different types of liquids. You have nigla the Torah, and then you have the nistar of the Torah, and you have the chasidus of the Torah. He says, mashke is the chasidus of the Torah. However, we can be living amongst Hasidim, and we can have access to all of the Sfarim of Hasidus that are sitting on our bookshelves. But if we don't take it in, we'll freeze to death. So when we look out at the world right now, when we're witnessing that you have the solution sitting in a freezer 2 blocks away from here, and in that same place, people are dying because they're not getting the remedy that's there for them. And the aim points a So our reaction shouldn't only be the physical demand that the cure should be given out, but that we should take to heart the mashal that this is representing. That we have the schus, we are Hasidim. We're going away from Chavdal Tevus. We are getting ready for the Rebbe's Yud Shvat. And Anachanami, we live amongst Hasidic people, and we have access to all of the Sfarim. The Rebbe printed all of the Sfarim of Hasidus, but we have to remember that we have the solution, but it's only going to heal us if we take it in. And yes, when we take it in, we have the solution. When we're going to celebrate our Yiddishkeit, when we're going to learn better Hasidus, when we're going to internalize Hasidus, and as the Rebbe expects of us, that the solution to the world, the emes solution is Mashiach. What will bring Mashiach? My mitzvah, your mitzvah. To do it with more heart, to do mitzvah with a bissel more passion, that together we have the tools, but we will put it into play, and we will indeed bring about the emes Yeshua, that with our avoida, as the Rebbe told us, we will bring Mashiach now, a gute und a freiliche und a gesunde Woche to all.